All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this SNP introduction to visual calendars. My name is Brittany, and I'm going to help guide you through this information today. If at any time there's questions or concerns, please bring them up in the chat, and I will address them as we go along. So I have everyone's audio disabled to avoid background noise. So like I said, if you have questions, please use the chat. I do have a handout that I will distribute after the webinar with all the information provided. And please use the hand check X marks as you go along. It will help me to kind of guide the information towards what you need. So first, to get us started, what is a visual calendar? They're also known as visual schedules or visual routines. For the purpose of this, I'm going to stick with visual calendar in terms of language, just to kind of keep things consistent, but just know that they are referred to in all those different terms. So visual calendars are a series of photographs or images. They could also include words or numbers depending on what you're depicting, the age of your child, all of those kind of factors. Depicting the sequence of events. They act as a tool to help children and provide an outline of expectations. So a visual calendar is a tool that is used to support children with daily routines, schedules, and tasks by outlining these sequences with visuals, which generally are easier to understand for children. So what do they look like? Well, there are many different formats that can be used for visual calendars. Which one you use really depends on your child or children and their unique needs and personalities. So remember, unique to the child. Most important is that your visual calendar is created with your child. So next I'm going to go through some different types of visual calendars and explain kind of how they're used and show you what they might look like. So the first one is a daily reflection board. So this one is used to go over the day in terms of the date, day of the week, the season, the weather, the temperature, all those things that you can see here. And this can be done at the beginning of the day as kind of like a discussion to start your day, or at the end of the day as like a recap. And this kind of visual calendar is really helpful learning all of these different concepts, which can be challenging to understand. Things like time and temperature, emotions. And it allows for your child and your family to have time for kind of self-reflection, like I said, for the day ahead or the day that's passed. This is a good practice that helps open up conversation in the family unit and helps you practice that kind of, like I said, self-awareness and mindfulness. The next one is probably one that we all kind of, if we have any idea about visual calendars, think of right off the hop because it's most used in school settings, which is generally a pretty common place that visual calendars are used. So a visual calendar that's kind of a daily timetable will show the activities for that day. So this can include times like you see in the one here that kind of shows kind of the school day or not, depending on the age of your child and their ability to understand kind of the timing of things. It could just include kind of activity-based things. It could have the whole day's event, or it can have maybe 2 or 3, as you see in this like now, next, later type format, which is following the same daily timetable. You might have 2 or 3 activities. You might have the whole day's activities. You might have part of the day's activities. All of those kind of fall in this into this format here. This format helps generally with managing transitions. So understanding what's coming next and when can be really helpful in terms of expectations and predictability for the child to not worry or get worked up about finishing a task because they don't know what's next. And it can also support managing behaviors related to participating in undesirable activities by helping the child to see that, maybe I don't like reading, but I do like spelling, and spelling is after. So if I get through reading, I get to do something more desirable afterwards. Keep in mind that how many activities you include on your visual calendar will depend on your child. So for some, the whole day's activities lined out on the visual calendar can be overwhelming. Some children need a smaller amount of activities to be more manageable for them. So you really have to, again, create your visual calendar with your child in mind. The next one is the one that we probably as adults mostly use for ourselves in terms of calendars, so like a weekly or monthly calendar. So this one can be kind of transformed into a visual calendar for your children as well, to help with kind of the anticipation of an exciting event or activity, or prepare them for kind of bigger life changes. So some examples of when this can be useful, so like if the parent is deployed or away from the home, to be able to notify kind of arrivals and departures can be really helpful to a child to kind of ease some of that anxiety. It can also be useful when you have like split custody to identify, what days are with mom and what days are with dad. Can also be useful to help manage some anxiety as it relates to bigger schedule changes or life events, and to kind of outline expectations and help count down the days. Some people find this helpful if their child struggles between weekdays and weekends, to be able to kind of know that that's coming can be, again, comforting to children. The next one is a routine or a task breakdown. So this one can be used to break down, again, a routine or a task into smaller, more manageable pieces to help kind of reinforce the sequencing. So you can see here the example of the bedtime checklist. So it will help in terms of smoothing kind of those bigger transitions, in this case from awake to asleep, by giving them a predictable sequence of steps that they take between the two. They can also break down single tasks. So as you can see here, the example of brushing your teeth, into smaller steps to either teach a new task or to reinforce ones of a familiar task if they need some kind of help in that area, or just, again, as a reminder. Some kids can find those reminders really helpful. Some other ways that visual calendars can be used is for things like chore responsibility charts. Help children with sequencing and sometimes even like remembering those tasks can be really helpful. It's also common to incorporate, as you can see on these two examples here, a way for your child to mark off whether they've been completed or not. Again, visually seeing what's done and what isn't, to kind of reinforce that expectation, that predictability, and that sequence. It can also be really helpful to provide your child with a sense of accomplishment if they've completed these tasks, which in turn kind of builds some self-esteem. So I've mentioned throughout some of the ways that visual calendars can be useful, but many parents ask, how will this help me, or kind of like, what are the benefits of using this kind of tool? So there's a long list of benefits in using visual calendars in all stages of childhood. But I'll go through a few of the main ones here just to kind of reinforce. So visual calendars promote the development of oral communication. They support that word-image connection. So by using visuals and providing verbal cues, we connect the words and the images. As I mentioned previously, it can build self-esteem by providing a sense of accomplishment, by marking tasks as complete, but also by reducing instances of behavioral issues by making expectations clear. So again, you won't have as many of those behavioral issues related to unclear expectations by having these kind of visual cues to support children's learning and understanding. The biggest one kind of, again, that most people seek out support from visual calendars is to manage those transitions. Which, you know, transitions can be difficult for adults, let alone kids of all ages and abilities. Transitions, change is hard, and so using these type of verbal and visual connection in terms of the visual calendars is a really useful tool. So one of the ways that the visual calendar supports this is providing the child with predictability. So if this predictability is and outlining like expectations clear is kind of, I'll say it over and over, but it is kind of the key element of visual calendars. It eases anxiety and upset during these transition periods and really helps them go a lot smoother. It gives the child a sense of autonomy and independence. So the child no longer needs to ask what's next, what needs to be done, etc. There's a visual to keep them informed or reminds them as they go along. It also lessens the need for the teacher or parent to direct to the next task and allows the possibility for the child to transition to the next task independently as appropriate. So, you know, if you're having a snack and they know that snack is now and then after I play independently, that way when they're done eating their snack, they can move right into independent play without all the kind of upset of, oh my goodness, what's next? Mom, what do I do? Like, what kind of stuff, which I'm sure as parents we're all familiar with. They also help teach daily organization in their structure inherently, but also in how they help children understand how events are sequenced and that logic piece. You know, their minds are really interesting in how they choose to go about things. And so by modeling to them the logical sequencing of events, they begin to learn that organizational key. It also helps with focus. So visual calendars can support children with difficulties focusing by providing a visual cue or reminder of the task at hand. So, you know, those short attention spans, if they kind of wander off, they daydream, and then they come back and, oh, what am I supposed to be doing? Instead of seeing that perhaps behavioral response to this, they can refer to their visual calendar and see, oh, I'm supposed to be doing this right now. And it helps kind of smooth that out again. Visual calendars also help teach time concepts, which I mentioned before, but these concepts can be really difficult because they're very abstract. So it can be really difficult to teach these concepts and understand them. So some of the main ones that visual calendars can help with is sequencing. So before, after, then, next, yesterday, tomorrow, first, second. And it does that by putting them into practice so they're more tangible and puts it into kind of practical terms for them instead of, again, that abstract piece. And finally, visual supports are a supplement to verbal communication. So when the child struggles to process quick enough to understand verbal cues, directives, commands, the visuals provide a quick reference to support that verbal understanding. So they kind of work hand in hand with your teaching or your parenting to kind of support that process and make it a little smoother and easier on your child. So now that you understand what visual calendars are and why they're helpful or useful or beneficial for your child, I wanted to walk you through kind of broadly how you would go about creating one. So I know through the visuals I shared, you might go, oh, okay, I can piece that together, but there's a few key steps here that are often missed or skipped over or not realized how important they are. So I'm just going to kind of go through these 6 steps that I've identified and kind of how to create them so that you have a better idea of how to make them successful for your family. So the first step is to think about your child. Identify the need. So what would be helpful to them? What area would you like to focus on? Is there a specific routine or task or concern that you're having that a visual calendar could address? Are you struggling with transitions? Are you struggling with anticipation of big events? Are you struggling with a routine or a task? Identify what that is so that you can then figure out how to implement the visual calendar. So that's the next step. You want to choose a format that best addresses the need. So for example, you want to choose one that addresses the need most specifically. So if you're struggling with your child brushing their teeth appropriately, you're not going to want to use a daily or weekly or monthly calendar. You're going to probably want to choose a task breakdown visual to help reinforce the appropriate steps to take in that task. Next, you'll want to explore ideas in how to create this format. Look up different ways, Google it, Pinterest it. Talk to one of us in terms of ideas or templates that you could use. Next, you want to gather your supplies, and a big piece of this is making sure to include your child. Then you're going to want to test it out for a while and see if it really addresses the need and evaluate and readjust as needed. So keep in mind, results won't be seen right away from implementing the visual calendar. It's not like the first time you use the visual calendar, it's going to be magic. It's going to take a little bit of time for your child to understand and to get used to that predictability and understand kind of the expectations and how they're laid out. And last but not least, you're going to want to reevaluate as you go along. So keep checking in and seeing how your visual calendar is working for your family and adjust as needed. So your visual calendar will probably evolve with your family and your child as your family changes in their needs and their strengths. Next, in terms of a couple tips and tricks for making your visual calendar successful, so for visual calendars that may change day to day, it's helpful to laminate it and to use the pieces with Velcro dots or magnets or some way to attach them and reattach them so they don't get ruined. You can get a like a laminating sheet that you don't need a laminator for that has like a sticky stuff so that you can put your sheet inside of it so that you don't need all these fancy devices to be able to create your visual calendar. Next, the biggest piece is to make it interactive. So have some way for your child to engage in it. Use ability to mark something as complete, or use pictures of your child completing that task as your visuals, and have your child help you make it. All these ways are going to make it exciting and engage your child in its use so that it's going to kind of increase your likelihood of success. If you're struggling with being creative, there's lots of templates available online for free or for a small fee to kind of get you going, give you one to start with. You can email one of us for templates or ideas as well, so don't hesitate to reach out. The biggest thing, again, is to not be afraid to adjust as you work with your child in the visual calendar. Remember, it's all about supporting them, so it needs to address their needs. Your visual calendar could change regularly, or it might require you to make a new one periodically to ensure you're getting the most out of this tool. And finally, again, please let us know how we can support you in creating your visual calendar. Don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. We can support you with troubleshooting, with kind of that creativity piece. We have some templates that we can share if you think that would be helpful. And again, don't hesitate to email with any questions as you venture through that process. Thank you for joining us.